Hi, I'm Mark Malusis, New York sports personality. You've heard me on radio and seen me on TV. Now I'm teaching right here at Iona. That's right. I'm an instructor in the new Sports Communication and Media Graduate Program. All classes are taught by industry professionals like myself in our brand new state-of-the-art digital lab. For more information, go to iona.edu and search sports communication or email graduate coordinator Mike Damergis. Go Gales!
The Professor Podcast with Mike Damergis.
Mike Damergis back with another edition of the Professor Podcast, and I'm with the renowned Dr. Andrew Billings, the Chair of Broadcasting and Executive Director for Alabama Program in Sport Communication. And Dr. Billings, thank you to the podcast. First off, your football program is looked to as a leader in college sports, much the way the Yankees are in professional baseball, and how you handle yourself, the school handles itself, and the football team handles itself. It's really a guide on how other colleges want to follow.
Yeah, no, it is. And first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to join you here. But overall, Alabama still is that epicenter of college football. I think we don't have to win the national title every year. The signs still say we want Bama, and until they don't, I think they look to us here. In that regard, I think people are taking their cues from it, and we're seen as kind of the epicenter for understanding what does it really mean to have college sports or not for the whole college landscape. So I think when you show up for a college and university, now you're not just signing up for the classes, you're signing up for the whole college experience. And at a place like Bama, there's kind of four legs to that stool. There's the classes, of course, but there's also the social scene, the bars, the things like that. For a lot of people, there's Greek life, but then that fourth prong is really major sports and that communal sense of there's no place I'd rather be than Saturday afternoon at a Bama game. So what happens if we end up pulling that leg from that stool becomes really interesting in terms of the ramifications on those other elements of what it means to be a college student.
You know, college football is something everybody rallies around, not only the students, but the alumni. They reflect back on a great time in their life, and it's so popular. So there's a psychological impact, but talk about the financial impact this has on small rural areas, much like a Penn State. If Penn State wasn't there, what would you have? You have poverty everywhere, and the money that the schools and football bring in, not just to the school itself, but the community as a whole. And if schools all go online, where's the money going to come from for these small towns?
I think what this is revealing is the economics of, especially college football, goes so far beyond anything, even for the non-sports fan. So just to give you a couple examples, one inside, one outside of the university. Inside the university, if you think about, your relationships with your donors and your alumni are so crucial. And if I try to think of, what are the top 10 ways or times that you can maintain those relationships, I would think fall and spring graduation. Usually there's some senior honors day or something where that happens. And then I'd think of the 7 home games. So what happens if you don't have that opportunity to visit with the alumni that we're increasingly relying on to keep the lights on and to be able to do everything we want to do? But then, as you said, outside of the university for these towns, and for people who haven't been to Tuscaloosa, we're roughly 105,000 with another 20 or 30,000 in Northport connected here. That's bigger than a lot of those places you talk about, the Clemsons or the Blacksburgs. But even then, the ramification is massive. One of our nicest hotels here is an Embassy Suites. Usually you can charge $119 a night. For the Georgia game, back when we thought it'd be full with fans, it was $1,000 a night, 2-night minimum, and sold out a year in advance. You can't make up that level of dollars. And so really all of a sudden you say, this isn't about just, do we love football? Do we love sports? It's the restaurants, it's the hotels, it's the entire economic system of these towns.
No, it's certainly a scary time for everybody. Now, for the Power 5, 2 conferences, the Big Ten and Pac-12 said they're going to postpone fall sports. Alabama, they're going to go ahead, and the SEC is going to have their schedule here. What's the plan to keep what on college football? You have over 100 players on a roster. It's going to be difficult to keep these players safe. You see the trouble baseball's having. We'll see what football can do, and if the NFL, who has more money than anybody, can't keep their players safe, how is college football going to do it?
It's certainly an interesting equation, and it's a bigger issue for college for a number of reasons, including of course that the athletes aren't paid. So you aren't a paid employee who's making this decision. But also, for instance, we've seen the NFL can make 85% of their money without gate receipts. They're that big of a TV product. College, it depends on how you parse these alumni clubs, or for here it's Tide Pride or wherever that gets you the good tickets. But it's 40 or 50%. So as you look at moving forward, you try to get a sense of, okay, what does moving forward look like? Testing wise, if this new saliva test that we're hearing especially is becoming widespread at the University of Illinois, is really fairly effective, quick results, under an hour, and $10 a test. We're talking about such massive numbers here that even if you have coaches and every player on the football team tested, 150 people times $10, $1,500, we can do that every single day, and it's still worth it if we get to move forward.
Well, the plan is that there's going to be college football in the SEC. We'll see how far it goes. What about, there's been talk spring football? I was a big USFL fan. Long live the Birmingham Stallions, Cliff Stout, Joe Krebs, and everything. Do you think for the smaller conferences this might be in crisis? It creates opportunity too. Maybe for the smaller conferences and everything. And is this an opportunity to maybe get some more attention for them if they actually maybe move full time to spring schedule? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think it's possible, but you do have some structures that go away. So all of a sudden, let's say Toledo is playing spring football. Well, they have no chance of really being on the top 25 rankings that could put them on the radar screen for a larger group. And from what I understand, no real chance of bowl games happening for them after that. So some of the ways that we highlight some of those smaller schools likely won't happen in the spring. But you're right. I think if everyone moved to spring football, it will also level the field a bit. I'm not saying Alabama loses to a Toledo or even an Arkansas, but the Alabamas, Clemsons, Ohio States of the world are going to have more people who opt to sit out to be ready for the draft. Whereas some of these other schools, they could have their full roster.
So if you were a sports agent and you have one of the top picks, do you recommend that your client sit out the season if it goes into the spring? Is this something you'd recommend, and just worry about the draft and not play football if they go to the spring schedule?
It's certainly, I'm not a draft expert. I think it's really dangerous in some way to get out of people's lens for a little bit. Trevor Lawrence, maybe not as much. We know he's pretty good, things like that there. But if you're projected, let's say, as a late first rounder and you didn't play, and all of a sudden some of these other people really flash, and the next thing you know, you're moving down that board, you're putting a whole lot of pressure on that pro day or some of the other ways that we would measure. So yeah, it can work out. Obviously, you're staying healthier that way, but you're not in football shape. And so there are some downsides to that too.
Your assessment so far of the college championship playoffs and the excitement that so far it seems to work out. They seem to get it right with this and expanding the playoffs a few years back.
Yes, no, I agree, and I don't want it to go to 8. I don't want it to go to 6. Rarely are we going to say that that 5th place team was left out when they clearly were number 1. And I think that the beauty of the college football season is that every game feels like a playoff game. And so, there was something that was years ago. We debated in class, should we have a playoff? This is before we had a playoff. I had several football players in the room. They all wanted to debate that issue, but they all insisted on the anti-playoff stance. And And they said, our bodies are falling apart at the end of the year. This is tough, even at our age. And so when people were proposing, we're still going to do 12 games, but then we'll do a 16-team playoff, that sounded rough for a lot of those players. And I think one of the things, getting back to spring football, you have to ask yourself, are we really going to ask unpaid college athletes? Yes, they get other forms of compensation, but do we really think they can do 2 football seasons, perhaps up to 30 games in less than a year's time?
Yeah, in 1985, when the USFL folded, players like Tom Thayer and Maurice Carthon played full seasons with their team that went on to NFL rosters there with the Chicago Bears, Maurice Carthon with the New York Giants. And Maurice told me Parcells didn't let up one bit when he came to camp despite playing an 18 game schedule.
Right. But it's tough. It's
Yeah.
gotta be.
Exactly. Well, things have lightened up since then, though. It's sessions aren't for what I understand is I remember
Oh yeah.
college football practice, us running to the hose to get drinks. They allow water now, which they really didn't allow in the past.
Isn't that crazy to think, that was your sign of toughness, is if you could go without water. At least we found other ways. It's not perfect, but certainly better than it was.
Yeah, and the Oklahoma is terrible. Some players are making a push that they want to play, that this is their career. This is an important time to showcase their talents. You think that's going to have an influence on whether there's a turn of attitude in the Big Ten or anywhere else?
I think it's going to be more on testing and what you don't if you really change your mind and decide you are going to play in the fall, you got to do it soon, and you don't want to go back to stop and start and stop and start. But really, I mean, if you move back to where the 3 major conferences that still plan to play this fall are, which is not, they are not discussing how do we finish the season or how do the playoffs look like. They're like, how can we get through one more week to make it viable to start? That really has to be our benchmark right now. We aren't sure what November looks like. We don't know about flu rates. From what I understand, if you look in the Southern Hemisphere, because everyone's social distancing and people are wearing a mask, flu cases are way down. And I say Southern Hemisphere because they're dealing with flu season right now. If that's the case here, maybe the opening for a full college football season is wider than it appears right now.
And we're with Dr. Andrew Billings, the chair of broadcasting at the University of Alabama. So the NFL, when they start their season, college football, once they start their season, we're going to see some different things as far as broadcasting goes. The networks really have to try and bring fans maybe closer to the game in some way. So this is also a creative opportunity for the networks to change things up a bit.
Yes, I'm excited to see the creativity, and I've liked seeing the creativity so far. I personally think the NBA product is pretty strong considering what they're up against. The piped in noise works for me. It does get you to reassess what the role of the fan is. Golf, I think, is working really well. Some other things seem odd. I think baseball without fans still seems a bit odd there because there's such the backdrop there. But football will be an interesting concept because so much of it is, it's not just the sound of it, it's the crowd itself. I remember when this first started, I loved Alex McDaniel, who lives up the road and is a sports reporter. She posted for the SEC tournament, if they were moving forward, every team should be allowed one fan, and then we'd focus on that one fan. And so we would become so identified with that one person, and that who gets to be that one person. It could be kind of entertaining.
Well, for the New York Jets, it's Fireman Ed. He's been made famous through the years.
There you go.
Supporting the
Yes.
Jets. It's as far as where we go and dealing with, you talk to your students in class. This is a strange time, and they look to professors and the faculty for answers here. And how do you address that in your classroom, dealing with students? Because we don't have the answers. We can't say yes or no with the situation.
Right. I actually, I taught an in-person class earlier this morning, and some of them were hurting. You could really tell, like in introductions, I wanted their name, I wanted their major, and I wanted one positive thing that happened to them during the pandemic. And some people really struggled to come up with that one in light of all this. From my perspective, it's not relaying anything in terms of certainty. I am not a health or medical expert, but trying to expand or try to think through things in some way. So, for instance, for me, I went through what are the ramifications of us wearing masks on the field of the classroom. I started talking about, if we're discussing race, it's hard enough as is. Imagine without being able to read someone's facial expression to tell, are they smiling? Are they angry? Are they worked up? You've got to extend some grace, and you've got to default on the side that everyone's trying to do their best. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be as flexible as I can, and accepting the fact that yes, this is going to be weird, but it's also memorable. And I think a lot of people are so thrilled to be back in something that, even if it looks and feels weird, it's still interacting with humans in a way that Zoom can't quite pull off.
Well, if you talk to people who are in their 30s or 40s, or me, 50, the best times of your life were when you were in college. So they all want to have that experience. Do you think this will maybe make it where people will appreciate the campus life once, and hopefully things do get back to normal? They'll talk about this time and thank God things got back to normal my senior year, that will appreciate the campus life of being in school, and also having the sports teams back. Maybe professional teams, college teams will appreciate the fans a little bit better.
Yeah, I am completely on that side of the equation. I've heard the other side where they say, look at what we've proven we can do using virtual technology. We don't have to go to work. We don't have to go to in-person class. And I think most people will still say it doesn't work as well. And B, I don't find people are as happy. I think there's a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues right now. And so I think it is making people appreciate just what it meant to be able to go out to lunch with someone, or the value of that communal football stadium being filled with 101,000 fans here. I think it's more an appreciation for that. And so we are going to, maybe we don't shake hands as much, maybe we don't hug as much, but we're going to seek human interaction, perhaps even more than normal, because we've seen what life is like when that's taken away.
He's Dr. Andrew Billings from the University of Alabama. Thank you so much for joining me on the Professor Podcast. Thank you.
Enjoyed it.